Coming up next on Arizona Horizon, it's the Journalists Roundtable. We'll take a look at the week's top stories, including a federal proposal to manage Colorado River water shortages that puts the majority of water cuts on Arizona.
Arizona Horizon is made possible by contributions from the Friends of Arizona PBS, members of your public television station.
Good evening and welcome to Arizona Horizon. I'm Ted Simons. It's Friday, and that means it's time for the Journalists Roundtable. And joining us tonight, Howie Fisher from Capital Media Services, Cameron Sanchez from KJZZ Radio, and Mark Brody, also from KJZZ. Panel, good to have you all here. Thank you so much for joining us. Howie, I'm going to start with you. This long-awaited plan, it's a proposal. It's not a done deal, but it's a proposal and it's a plan, and it doesn't look good for Arizona.
Well, it was never expected to look good for Arizona. I mean, we've got this whole issue. We won't go through the history. The upper basin states said, why would we take any cuts? And so that left the lower basin states, California, Nevada, and Arizona, to say, okay, here's our plan. Here's what we're willing to take as our share. Well, when the upper basin states didn't agree, Bureau of Reclamation came in and said, oh, we've got an idea. And pretty much it's the lower basin states and twice as much as the lower basin states were willing to offer. And out of that, it's like a 20% cut. But Arizona, being the junior water rights that they have on these things, is taking an even bigger cut, and that's where the trouble comes.
And again, this is a 10-year framework, although I think it calls for reconsideration every couple of years to keep Lakes Mead and Powell, keep those water levels from being, and this is a drought emergency plan as well. So talk to us about your thoughts on this. I know you cover a lot of water stuff. I mean, we've been waiting for this thing, and we kind of get it, and now I know everyone in Arizona is not pleased.
And they probably shouldn't be, but this is not exactly a surprise. The idea of coming back to the table every 2 years is essentially nothing. That is a minimal amount of time, especially for plans this big that affect so many different states and for so many things that have to go into consideration. The idea of coming back that frequently means that they're basically never leaving the table. And this lower basin proposal is not, I think, what was ideally conceived of when they were thinking, okay, the water rights are going to expire. The idea was hopefully that all 7 states could come to an agreement on their own, and the federal government wouldn't have to step in, nobody would have to go to court, and it would be a compromise that everyone would be, satisfied enough with. But really, this lower basin idea is not that, and it is the federal government coming in, and it is us taking a really big cut. And so, yes, it's going to make a really big difference.
Up to 3 million acre-feet a year in a severe drought, up to. So, but if it gets to 3 million, already the State Department of Water Resources, they're saying that would be devastating to Arizona's economy. And talk again as well, what Cameron was talking about, Arizona did have an offer, a proposal, but that did not seem to fly very far.
Yeah, I mean, so there are still more details to come, more specifics to come from the federal government on this. And I think there is some hope that the deal that Arizona, California, and Nevada negotiated earlier this year might be reflected more in some of those deals. But yeah, I mean, to Cameron and Howie's point, this was not unexpected. And the Central Arizona project is going to take some pretty big cuts. That's, of course, the canal system that brings water to the Phoenix and Tucson areas. The one interesting thing about the 2-year coming back is, we've seen how well the 7 states negotiate over the past several years, and now they're going to have to do it every 2 years, or as Cameron said, basically never leave. So it'll be interesting to see, once these go into effect, does that maybe kick some people into gear and maybe help push the negotiations along a bit?
But the other half of it is, I'm assuming, there'll be no deal. Why should the upper basin states, Wyoming and Montana and Utah and Colorado, why should they bother? But this comes back to the Bureau of Reclamation, which comes back to the Trump administration. Now, Andy Biggs and all the Republicans say, oh, we could have negotiated a better deal if we'd been in. Hey, you're Republicans. Why can't you get the Trump administration to recognize the cuts that will be taken? Why Arizona needs the water, whether we provide, 80% of the winter vegetables. We've got all the high-tech industry that needs to be fed by this. But this really comes down to, you're never going to negotiate a deal with the upper basin states. They don't see any need to. And so it comes down to, can somebody force the Trump administration, the Bureau of Reclamation, to say, no, this isn't fair?
Can Arizona force those upper basin states to do something? Because there is money for a lawsuit, there are legal funds collected, and there have been threats Tom Bushatsky at the State Water Department has threatened to go to court over this.
Yeah, I mean, we can go to court, but I don't know if it'll make much of a difference. Part of the issue is basically how the river is created. The headwaters is where the river starts, right? And that's up in the upper basin. And then water collects into these reservoirs that are dammed, and then it goes to the lower basin. It's the federal government's role in regulating the water in those basins because it's federal dams. That's how they're able to really affect the flow. So they don't have that much of a way to even implement upper basin cuts if they wanted to. Plus, we take more of the water down here. We've used more of our allocation. So the upper basin states are kind of sitting there like, you know, how are you going to cut us and why would you bother? We're not the problem here. This is your guys' water that you are so reliant on. You're the one who's been using it. You take the cuts, and we'll just keep doing what we're doing, which is managing it just fine. And I don't see that they have any urgency really to come to the table, like Howie said.
But all this comes back to the fact that we put together a plan for the river back when things were wet. We had a snowpack up in the Rockies and things like that, and everyone said, oh, you know, this is wonderful. Arizona was the last one to get a seat at the table. We agreed to have the lower rights to get the federal funding for the Central Arizona project. And now everyone's saying, well, we never thought that the flow would be this bad. But we built an economy on that much water coming. And that comes down to certain extent what Kevin's talking about, who takes the cut? Is it agriculture? Is it cities? Is it industry? And our water laws here are not that clear.
And I want to get back to that in a second here. But again, the upper basin states didn't think things would get this bad either, when back in 1922 or whenever the legal aspects were signed. And again, I don't want to brush this aside. There have been threats of lawsuits saying, in the letter of the law, we need to get deliveries from the upper basin. That's what apparent Arizona officials say. That's the law. I mean, are we going to see this thing in court?
I mean, it's certainly a possibility. I've not heard anybody say once the plan has come down, yes, we'll see you in court. But to the point you made, Ted, yeah, there's money been set aside, I think, in the last couple of state budgets for a litigation fund. There's, you know, Tom Bushatsky and others have said, you know, look, if we think we're not getting the right end of the stick here, we will go to court and we'll let the judges figure it out.
But it's fine to say we're entitled to this many acre feet. Now, just for perspective, you know, an acre foot serves 3 to 4 households a year, so 3 million acre feet is a lot of stuff.
Single
so
family.
I have to explain what we're dealing with. But the other part of it is, it's fine to say we're entitled. It isn't there. And so we can go to court and get a judge to say, yes, you're entitled to this many acre feet, but there's no way to deliver it.
But that could be, some of it could be there if the upper basin states agree to conserve, at least, if not the way Arizona wants them to conserve, at least they're not even voluntarily conserving.
You know what? As a California native and an Arizona resident, I totally get where you're coming from. I don't think they care at all.
No, I know
I
they
really
don't.
don't.
I know they don't.
I asked the Utah governor about this, and he was basically like, you know, it's us that's desperate, and it's us that's using it. And so, do I think it'll go to court? Yeah, probably. I think this will go to court in some iteration. I mean, maybe even the intra-Arizona negotiations will go to court. But do I think we have standing? I don't know.
All right, the political aspects. Howie, we'll start with you. Where does this rate, in terms of importance, come to the November election?
I think that people don't focus on water. They turn on the tap, it's there. They turn on the sprinkler, the water is there. I think that people are going to try to make it an issue, but when you start talking about, we're losing 3 million acre feet of water, and people say, yeah, okay. I think that the Republicans, I think Andy Biggs will try to say, we've seen Alexander Culloden try to say, we would do better.
Right.
I don't know if anybody's buying that.
What do you think? Is it going to be a factor in November?
I feel like every couple of years we say, oh, water is going to be a big issue in this election, and it really isn't.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen more politicians and elected officials coming out over the last couple of weeks talking about it. I suspect it's in large part because this was coming down. I don't know. I mean, maybe. I mean, to the extent that agriculture has been hit pretty hard in this state and might continue to be hit hard, like in rural areas, that might be an issue, but I don't think it's going to be like top 3.
I would gently disagree. I think that it's alarm bells for people who are talking about their future and thinking, do I want to buy a home in a state where the water might become really expensive, even if there is water, where the availability of water means that we have to pay more for it. I've talked to my friends in my normal life, not my journalism life, and they bring this up. And I do think that politicians have been talking more about water. I mean, I'm biased because I'm interested in water issues, but I do think this will gradually become more important. Maybe if we don't see it as much this November, then I think in the next cycle.
Sticking with you, and we're sticking with the idea of the political ramifications of all this, Andy Biggs, Congressman Biggs, chose his running mate for lieutenant governor. It's weird to say that. We haven't had to say that before.
Yeah.
And this is someone who is very big on water and very big on water for agricultural interests.
Very intentional choice.
Yes.
It's a former lawmaker, Senator Sina Kerr. Well, I can't call her senator anymore, but potential Lieutenant Governor Sina Kerr. She was in the ledge for a long time, and she meets a lot of these demographic checkboxes, right? It kind of reminds me of when Kamala Harris picked Tim Walz to be her running mate. You're kind of picking someone who is hopefully representing areas or folks who you don't. And in this case, we're talking about a woman who's seen as maybe more moderate, not far right, who's experienced and has somewhat name ID, although not that much. But also, I think the main thing is rural, right? So she represented Buckeye, and she had a dairy farm for many years there, and she's kind of known for representing agricultural interests, like you said. So I think the idea is rural and urban on one ticket.
But starting with where we were, she is also, as Cameron pointed out, been very protective of agricultural interests. She tried to undermine Chris Mays' lawsuit against Fondamonte, the Saudi farm that's just sucking the valley dry out there near Vicksburg. And I think at some point, in terms of the urban folks, they say, well, wait a second. We understand agriculture was here first. But we also understand we don't have it. It's a Wild West outside the metropolitan areas. Why should we let them keep draining it? I think this can come back and bite her if, in fact, they see her as simply here to protect water for farms, even as cities need it.
Yeah, was Sina Kerr a surprise?
I mean, she was on a lot of the lists, the short lists that people were putting out there on social media and elsewhere. So I don't think it's a huge shock. I mean, she was one of those names that I think people thought it was going to be her or a couple of other people.
Yeah, and she said that it was a surprise to her. She didn't,
Maybe she hadn't been seeing those lists.
Yeah, but and the idea as well, the lieutenant governor is going to have to lead an agency, a state agency. That's part of the deal, which she could obviously do. And also, Congressman Biggs is Congressman Biggs. He's got to get back to Washington here relatively soon and do a lot of voting and a lot of this and a lot of that. That leaves her having to do a lot of campaigning, but at least he's got someone here.
Yeah, I mean, it helps him. I don't know how much the lieutenant governor is going to be a big political figure once we have that office, and this is the first time. So I'm not really sure how that reshuffling looks in the executive tower, but it's potentially a good jumping off point for people who want to be governor. And I don't know that that's Sina Kerr.
Right.
But if they give her a position like running ADOA or something like that, she basically have her fingers in a lot of Arizona state operations and behind the scenes stuff.
And the other piece of it, by having lieutenant governor, it used to be Secretary of State was next in line, wasn't necessarily the same party, which is why we decided to have tickets. Now people are going to be looking at that office specifically with, how would we feel if this were our next governor,
Exactly.
which is going to mean she is going to be under a microscope over all of her issues on abortion issues, on gender issues, and on water issues.
Stop with the abortion issues because she has been very strongly anti-abortion.
Yes.
How does that play into the mix?
I don't think it plays much anymore because when she introduced her bill to ban abortions after 6 weeks, that was long before voters adopted Prop 139, which enshrined in the Constitution. That doesn't mean she's changed her mind, but I don't see abortion playing very much this year.
All right. The competing ballot measures, it makes your head spin here.
There's a lot of them.
But the spinning has slowed down a little bit here as a court nullifies the voucher. Talk to us about what the court did as far as saying this doesn't cut it constitutionality, as far as this measure that would go after vouchers.
Yeah, so the measure you're talking about, and I don't know I haven't learned the numbers yet, but this is the one that would ostensibly protect vouchers for military families.
Yes.
But it would also say that if you approve this, any other initiative that could affect vouchers is void. Like it's gone, which includes if the teachers union measure remains on the ballot, would include that one that voters could potentially decide this November.
And I think the operative phrase there was, it also said.
Yes.
That's it. That's ball game.
Right. I mean, that was basically the judge said these are two very different things. And, a lot of people know about the single subject rule that initiatives have to stick to one thing. It can't just be a take it or leave it where we have like 8 different things. And if you like one of them but don't like 7 of them, you still have to vote for it if you want that one. This was, they're 2 separate things. The judge said you can't do that.
Yeah, was this a surprise decision, do you think?
Not to me, because I watched the court hearing, and the judge was pretty candid about not buying this. And, the attorneys for the Republican lawmakers had to be like, we're not tricking people. This is going to be reported on. So how could we be tricking people? And I was like, I don't know about that, guys.
Yeah, not a good sign.
But it sets an interesting precedent going forward. I mean, like the courts being uninterested in that argument and, the legislative intent. And it sort of makes me wonder about future ballot measures from both the voter referral side of things and the legislative side.
Wasn't this former Governor Ducey, he had a PAC going for this one? Was this the one that had the PAC?
He has a PAC going to support this. Again, we're going to start to learn the ballot numbers bit by bit to say, pass this and protect against Prop 212, which is the voucher measure,
yes.
and do that. Now, they're going to go to Supreme Court because why not? They got nothing to lose at this point. But I think the courts have been a lot looser lately. It used to be it was strictly log rolling. If you like Part A but don't like Part B, we can't do it. They've said more recently it's part of a whole scheme, and that's what the attorneys for the state were arguing. Well, it's all part of vouchers, and the judge said, "Oh, come on, give me a break." I mean, it's a variant on the other one we're going to talk about, which has to do with the unions.
Yes.
They crafted this measure to go after the Arizona Education Association. Very clear. It says you can't use school funds for union activities. But then they put in language, they say, oh, well, this isn't what we meant, but that says the state and the cities and political subdivisions cannot negotiate with any public employee union. Now, the lawmaker said, well, again, that's not what we meant. And the judge said, no, the words mean what they do.
Yeah.
So you can't force, if you want to go after the AEA, you cannot then go ahead and force people to say, and we're also going to shaft the other union negotiations.
Basically said that it was too broad.
Yeah, they sure did. And it kind of, like, reading these rulings and talking about this, it kind of makes you think back to the end of the legislative session when there were these proposed deals to, hey, we'll take this off if you take that off in terms of referrals, and the idea of maybe having a special session to deal with vouchers. I think it's interesting as the appeals come and we continue to see with Prop 212 if there are enough signatures to keep that on the ballot. It's going to be really interesting to see what ends up happening with relation to what some of the proposals were between the teachers union and Republican legislators.
Sounds like that deal might have worked out pretty well if those folks had hung tough a little bit, huh?
We'll never know. I mean, the education thing, I think we're not likely to see an appeal, or it's pretty clear that we're not going to have an appeal on the teachers union issue because everyone's between a rock and a hard place, at least the Republicans, because they don't have the leverage to get Democrats to come in and agree to strike the language to be like, oh, we're just attacking the teachers union, because Democrats don't want to attack the teachers union. But if they appeal and they push harder, then they're running even more afoul of police and fire unions. Mm-hmm. And you don't ever want to run afoul of the police and fire union. So I think they might just let that one die quietly.
And when you're talking about the idea of the single subject as we were discussing here, there was a case regarding election changes that can stay on the ballot. Even there's all sorts of things in there, but the judge said there are all sorts of things, but they deal with the same thing.
Yeah, they all deal with elections. You have to squint a lot of the times on this. This is one that has some real sweetheart things. For example, it says you have to be a citizen to vote. Well, duh, that's already the law. Mm-hmm. But there are some things in there, for example, on campaign finance about who can contribute, whether foreigners can contribute. There's also something very interesting on there, which I think is part of the reason folks want to kill it, the foes, which says you're going to have to provide ID anytime you cast a ballot. Now, how does that work with mail ballots? Alexander Kolodin, who crafted this thing, says, we'll work it out. Trust us. We're from the legislature. We will do this. But I think that, and the groups, the foes came in and said, you can't put all this into a single measure because there are too many disparate, I want this but not this kind of thing. And the judge said, again, squinting, look, it's close enough. It's all within Title 16, which deals with elections, so therefore it's okay.
Mark, talk about the idea of how this would impact vote by mail. What do you do?
Well, I mean, a lot of Arizonans, the vast majority of Arizonans vote by mail. So, I mean, if there's an idea of like, do you have to, I think Gina Swoboda said, like, am I going to have to put a photocopy of my driver's license in my mail-in ballot so they can prove who I am? And I think to Howie's point, that's one of the issues that critics of this are like, well, tell us how it's going to work. Like, don't tell us we will figure it out. Tell us how it's going to work so we can actually figure out, do we like this or do we not?
Is this going to get a lot of push, you think, once it's going to be on the ballot? Is it going to get a big push from supporters, or are they going to sit back and go, wait a minute, what are we doing here?
It's definitely something they're campaigning on, and Culloden especially, since he's running for Secretary of State. This is one big thing he can point to and be like, this is my omnibus referral on election reform. This is what I can show that I've done on elections. But it's a completely unanswered question, this mail-in voting issue. And I asked him about it, and he was basically like, oh, that's fear-mongering. This isn't going to affect mail-in voting. But there's still no explanation, and there needs to be in the law for how do you implement it. And I think that bill was dropped in January. And I remember in January being like, what the heck? It's a very short bill, and he keeps being like, well, just read it for yourself. I've read it many times. It doesn't make sense to me.
Well,
I don't understand how they implement that.
Well, what he did is he crafted this as a constitutional amendment, sort of directing the legislature somewhere down the road to do it. And there's something else in there. As a constitutional amendment, it tells the courts, you will defer to the wishes of the legislature if we say it's necessary to promote public confidence. What the heck is that supposed to mean?
Okay, all right. Look, before we get off the legal angle here, the Secure the Border Act passed by voters overwhelmingly, and it's been kind of hung up because it's hung up in Texas, and it's symbiotic. New things going on there?
Well, what happened is a group called the Florence Immigration Rights Project, which provides legal services to migrants who have problems and been working with those who were picked up by the feds, said, look, this is illegal. It's the state trying to enforce federal law, and B, it affects us because we don't have the resources to go ahead and do this. They asked Judge Mike Liberty, who's a Doug Ducey appointee, was a Doug Ducey staffer, and he's an appointee of Trump, to put the law on hold, a temporary restraining order. The problem is what the judge said is, who is being harmed here? You haven't had a single person arrested since this law was allowed to take effect on July 14th. Nobody's been arrested. Nobody's being deported, because this is a very weird law. It says if a police officer sees someone coming across the border other than the port of entry or has reason to believe, they can take them in, charge them with a Class 1 misdemeanor. But remember, this is another overly cutesy bill, because it isn't designed to jail people. It's designed to tell these defendants, tell you what, if you agree to self-deport, we will drop the charges. So it basically becomes a question of enforcement. Judge said, very interesting arguments on federalism and everything else, but you don't have standing, and nobody's been harmed.
Yeah, and that's the Attorney General's office as well. It's like, what's going on here? Nothing's happened, so what are we doing?
Yeah, you kind of have to wait until you have a victim to say that there's an issue with the law that they're being charged under.
Yeah. All right, Mark, before we run out of time here, we do want to mention Harry Mitchell, who passed away at the age of 86, Tempe mayor, I think forever. I mean, when you think of Tempe and you think of one person, you think of Harry Mitchell.
Especially if you see that statue of him.
The statue and everything,
right? Yeah. No, yeah, he was at Tempe mayor forever, taught government at the high school he went to for much of the time he was mayor, served in the state senate for a while, served in Congress for a couple of terms. I mean, he did a lot of different things, and it was, I think, especially around Tempe, really well liked and well respected, especially by people who had him as a teacher.
Yeah, and was very much behind Tempe Town Lake, so there were some critical voices there. They didn't want to see anything. I think they liked the dirt down there. I don't know, but he was behind that. He was behind a lot of the growth, whether you like it or not, in Tempe.
Well, he was a visionary, and even some of the people who probably doubted some of his plans, like converting, like, say, the ditch down there into Tempe Town Lake, they trusted him enough. They trusted his judgment enough to say, I'm going to give Harry the benefit of the doubt, so I'm going to go ahead and go along with this.
And we should mention that his first race, he beat the incumbent, J.D. Hayworth, back in 2000. There's a name from the past, J.D. Hayworth in 2006, and a Republican challenger by the name of David Schweikert in 2008.
Yeah, he beat Schweikert the first time that they went up against each other. Harry Mitchell beat Schweikert. But of course, after that election was when the Affordable Care Act was up for a vote. And as one of Mitchell's former staffers told me, they all knew that by Mitchell voting for the ACA, that would cost him his seat and them their jobs. And to hear his former aide say, he didn't care.
Yeah.
That was like he thought that was the right vote to take, and he took it.
Yeah, do you seem genuinely interested? I'm not including you here because you weren't here for Harry. Do you hear about Harry Mitchell at all?
I do a bit.
What do you hear?
Not as much in his capacity, though, as the council, which I think is what most people know him as. But I've heard the name ever since I started in Arizona politics, which I think just goes to show that he did leave a mark. And it does it is one of those things where I hear about a more bipartisan time.
Yes.
And people talking about him with respect who may not even have been in the same political party or who had to go up against him. I think Schweikert put out a statement, which is kind of sweet.
Yeah,
Bittersweet.
yeah. And when you look in the dictionary under the word avuncular, there's Harry Mitchell.
Yeah,
Just a nice guy.
Nice guy. Look, you walk around with him somewhere. He understood retail politics. He knew people's names. He could go up and say, and I heard your mother was ill.
Yes.
And how's she doing? And all the rest of that. That is so much of what he understood. You can certainly do it on a city level, a little harder on a congressional district level. But he understood retail politics, and he understand. People know you, and that's how you get things done.
Last question on this one, Mark. Would a Harry Mitchell survive in today's politics?
That's tough to say, but you don't see a lot of people who are like Harry Mitchell in politics left. So maybe that's the answer.
It'd have to be a small town. And Tempe at the time was in some ways a small town.
Very much because of him. But I think everything there is something's named after Harry. There's a Mitchell this all over the place. Anyway, Harry Mitchell, dead at the age of 86, quite a legacy. Panel, good to have you here. Thanks for joining us. That's it for now. I'm Ted Simons. Thank you so much for joining us. You have a great weekend.
Support for Arizona PBS comes from viewers like you and from